Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It is now just past 3:30, so we're due to start now. Um, I want to say a very good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. And we're going to be talking about enhancing the efficacy by addressing challenges on the leaf. My name is Brian de Villiers. I'm currently working as a consultant for Villa Crop Protection. After I spent many years working for Villa, I worked for 17 years with the Villa team. I want to thank you for joining today. We trust that you will find this session insightful and valuable as we discuss how factors on the plant can impact product performance and efficacy. And just before I begin, I've just got three little small points that I'd just like to talk about. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the Villa team that's helped me with these webinars. First one was Volton and the next two were me, that are in the background, and without them we really couldn't do these webinars. So thank you very much. I'm not going to name any names, but thank you for everything that you do. Then I'd also like to say hopefully we won't have any issues with electricity cutting off in my town or something with the Wi-Fi or whatever. But if there is, don't leave the webinar. We will then try and make an alternative arrangement with a hotspot or something, and then they'll carry on with the webinar just after that. So just be patient with that. And then if you don't mind, or if there are any questions, I think the best is you see my personal details on this first slide. You are more than welcome to contact me personally via phone or via email. But I think it might be a bit cramped to do a lot of questions here. So yeah, let's see how it goes. And please contact me if you have any questions about anything that I handled in the webinar. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about what happens on the leaf, and I call this the stepchild of. Before I carry on, I'm just going to put my camera off. Okay, then I'll just save a bit of bandwidth. I call this one the stepchild of application technology. And that is because we often don't think what happens to a spray droplet after it has dried and it's lying there on the leaf surface. So hopefully today I'll give you some pointers as to what happens afterwards and what can influence the efficacy of products on the leaf. And I think you'll be very surprised at some of them, but all the detail that I'm going to be giving you today is backed up by scientific data and trials, and it's been proved. So so we've got some strong research to back up the claims that we make. Now, a bit of a background about the content that we're going to be discussing today. First of all, I'm going to give you a first few slides, just a bit of background that might make you think a bit more about why we often forget what happens on the leaf after the product has been applied. And then we're going to be discussing surface tension, one of the biggest enemies of spray droplets. After that, we're going to be talking about absorption. And then Villa's adjuvants that address retention, droplet spreading, and absorption. So we're going to be talking there more about the surfactants, in Afrikaans die benatters. And then we're going to end off with the stickers. Villa isn't really into stickers, but I'll just have one slide about the stickers. So we're going to be talking the adjuvants we're going to be talking about today are the products that contain surfactants, oils, or stickers. And then lastly, I'll just summarize everything. And then please stay in the webinar because we're going to be having a competition right at the end where you can win a very nice prize. So just stick around, and we'll be doing that on the very last slide. Okay, let's start with a bit of background. And like I said, I hope this makes you think a bit about why we often forget about what happens on the leaf. Say, for instance, we've got a glyphosate dissolved in your spray water. We tend to think that once we have conditioned the water with an ammonium sulfate product, for instance, like Class Act or Velocity or whatever, we tend to think that half of the battle is won. And then furthermore, we also tend to think that if we've got enough coverage on plants, so therefore if the droplets are the right size and we get increased coverage and so on, so we fixed the water quality and we fixed the spray droplets. So you're going to get many more droplets that reach the target. Then we tend to think the job is over. But I just want to show you this. In this case, this particular application was done 100% correctly, except that the weeds were very big. Okay, let's forget about that for a minute, but that gave us some nice photomaterial. But the mixture was a registered mixture, it's glyphosate plus 2,4-D. They added ammonium sulfate to this mixture, which is 100% correct. And what happened was the grower applied from right to left. He applied this product or this mixture with a specific adjuvant, and then he switched over because he didn't have any more of that adjuvant. He had something else in his shed and he switched over to another adjuvant. And great was his surprise when eventually he saw what the difference in control was. And the only difference here was the good control on the left. He applied it with a surfactant, a water-soluble surfactant, and on the right he applied this mixture with an oil adjuvant. So I think that should get you thinking as to the importance of adjuvants and how important it is to just choose the right adjuvant, in that it would be a surfactant or an oil, or maybe even later we're going to be talking about different surfactants and how they can also differ from one another. For the Afrikaans speaking people, the surfactant in Afrikaans is benatters, the word benatter. So let's start at the beginning. One of the biggest enemies of a spray mixture and the spray droplet is surface tension. Now, you guys must remember we fixed the water quality already, and maybe we've even fixed the droplet spectrum. But if we do nothing about the surface tension of the spray solution, then we're going to still have problems. So water is typically a liquid that has a relatively high surface tension. So that means that the spray droplets of that specific spray solution, if we've done nothing about the surface tension, those spray droplets are going to act like rubber balls. So a rough definition of surface tension is the ability of a spray droplet to act like a rubber ball if we do nothing about the problem. So let's see what happens if we apply a product. We don't use a surfactant or an oil adjuvant, or there's not a surfactant or an oil adjuvant built into the formulation of one of these products. Simply what happens then is that you're going to get bouncing off of droplets. So you've done all the hard work, you've fixed the water quality, you've fixed the spray droplets on the ideal size range, but because you've done nothing about the surface tension of the water, you get droplet bounce and you get poor retention of that particular crop protection product. So you can see that the plant phase is a further phase, and you can do everything else correctly, but if you get this plant phase wrong, then you're going to pay for it with poor efficacy. The next thing that's going to happen if you do not use or there's not a surfactant or oil in the spray mixture is you're not going to get this. You're not going to get any droplet spreading. So that's the next thing that surfactants and oils do in water. They give you droplet spreading. If you do not have surfactants and oil in that particular spray solution, the droplets are not going to spread out at all. So therefore, you're going to get less retention in the first place, And in the second place, you're going to get much less droplet spreading, both of which affect the coverage. So it's not just your deposition agents that affect coverage. It's also the surfactants and the oils that you use in your spray solution that helps that you get less droplet bounce and that you get more droplet spreading. Now let's look at this video of master lock, and you'll see those two concepts very clearly in this particular video. So the droplet strikes the leaf surface, and what does it do? It doesn't run off, it doesn't shatter, it doesn't bounce. It's retained on the leaf surface, so that in the first place it's increased the coverage, and then secondly you get a certain amount of spreading. And spreading is important for products. Excessive spreading is not always a good thing, and we'll get to that later. But you need some spreading of that spray droplet to enhance or to increase the coverage on the leaf surface. So therefore you're getting more product that stays on the leaf surface. But I want to give you a word of caution, and it's a very, very important word of caution. Retention and droplet spreading are not always correlated. Let me repeat that again. The amount of droplets that are retained on the leaf surface and droplet spreading are not correlated. That means that super spreader surfactants, they might spread a lot on the leaf surface, but it doesn't mean that they're always going to give you the most retention. Some products, and I'm not downing super spreader products, I'm just taking an example. Some products may reduce the surface tension a lot, and they might spread very nicely. But that doesn't mean that they're going to retain more droplets on the leaf surface. So don't think that you want to retain more droplets on the leaf surface, that you're always going to use a product that has super spreading abilities. That is not always the case. Sometimes products with less spreading ability retain more droplets on the leaf surface. It sounds counterintuitive. It doesn't sound right, what I'm saying, but it's what I'm referring to, and I'm not going to go into that at this stage. It's dynamic surface tension. It's when that droplet impacts the leaf. What is the surface tension there? And sometimes super spreader products haven't got a good dynamic surface tension and they could bounce off the leaf. Okay. So the first two aspects that we've spoken about now is retention and droplet spreading. And they are both influenced by the surface tension of the water. The higher the surface tension, the more droplet bounce, and the less spreading that there will be. That's normally the case, but not always the case, that I showed you in this previous slide. So let's talk about the next thing. And this is probably, with my work with adjuvants, this is probably the place where people make the biggest mistakes, because they reckon that surfactants and oils are just there to reduce the surface tension, to increase retention, and to increase droplet spreading. But that's only where their function starts. They got a very important function as far as absorption of systemic products especially are concerned. And this is why it is so vitally important. I can't stress this enough. Always use the registered adjuvant, surfactant or oil that has been registered with a particular product or a tank mixture. If you change from one product to another, even though they may look very similar or they do very similar things, it could be that you get the same retention, the same droplet spreading, but the absorption couldn't be totally different. So absorption on the leaf faces numerous challenges. And it's actually, I don't know if miracle is the right word, but it's amazing to see that crop protection products still work if you see the challenges that they must face. From the spray tank to the droplet phase, and then probably the major challenges are on the leaf itself. So if we look at the first challenge that absorption on the leaf faces, it's weather conditions. So it's temperature, it's how much cloud cover. It is humidity is a very big one. That is important. And then obviously related to weather is also under drought conditions, the plants would be under stress with a thicker waxy layer on the leaf surface, etc., etc., etc. So weather and environmental conditions during application and after application too, when products are still active on the leaf. You know, when the water's evaporated, there's still a lot of activity that happens after that. Weather and environmental conditions play a massive, massive role. So please stick to label recommendations as far as weather conditions are concerned. I know it's not always easy, especially in a country like South Africa, but it's important that we apply these products under the correct weather conditions. So that's the first challenge that is faced um, by droplets and crop protection products on the leaf, and absorption in particular. The next one is trichomes on the leaf. You know, those hairy structures on the leaf are called trichomes, and that's the next challenge. Obviously, on hairy leaf surfaces, like for instance, I'm thinking now coniza, scralans. If you look at that leaf, it's almost got a woolly structure on the leaf. So you can imagine if you're applying a product, it does not break the surface tension enough, or the adjuvant that you apply with it, it's going to lie on those hairs, those trichomes, and never be absorbed. It's very difficult for a product to be absorbed via the trichomes. It must normally go via the leaf itself and not the hairy structures on the leaf. So that's important that we get that droplet to go through that trichome layer and lie on the leaf surface. The next thing, and also a very important challenge that crop protection products, especially systemic products, face on the leaf surface is the waxy layer on that leaf surface. So obviously, when you look at weeds, for instance, and crops, all of them have got different wax structures and thickness of wax. And then obviously, if weather conditions, environmental conditions are poor, that means that the wax gets thicker and it becomes more and more of a challenge. And I don't know if you know this, but different crop protection products have different roots that they go into the plant, main roots. So the story that they go through the stomata is not really true. There's probably some product that is absorbed through the stomata, but normally they go through the leaf surface, and then they get absorbed into the plant. Now it's important, for instance, if you're applying an SL or an SG product, that's a soluble liquid or a soluble granule, that normally you apply surfactants with that, water-soluble products, because it's got a different entry route. Those products normally go through the polar entry route. So let's think of a product like glyphosate, for instance. Glyphosate is going to go through the polar entry route. So what it's going to do, it's going to look for cracks in that wax so that it doesn't have to go through the wax, and then find the path of least resistance until it gets into the plant. So that's where your SL and SG formulations are going to be absorbed. Products that are more oil soluble or less water soluble, like your EC, SE, EW, some WDG formulations, ODs. Oh, yeah, there are so many of these products. When they are systemic, they normally follow a different entry route into the plant, and we call that the non-polar entry route. And what they like to do, they like to keep in the waxy layers of the leaf. So they stick in those waxy layers of the leaf, and therefore, initially, this is now just the first part of the absorption process. That is why it's important to often apply oils with these products. There are obviously always exceptions to the rule, and you must look at the label as to what adjuvant you must apply. Don't just use this as a blanket recommendation. But this is why there are surfactants and oils. They are used for different reasons. They are used with different formulations of crop protection products. The next issue or hurdle that crop protection products face are tank mixtures and cations in water. But let's forget about the cations. We've spoken about the cations previously, and we've told you that you must use ammonium sulfate-based products. And our products are class act and the velocity. But let's talk about tank mixtures. Tank mixtures are probably one of the biggest reasons that you get antagonism on the of products. So what we did here, let me just explain this to you. What we did here was we applied a sulfonyl urea herbicide. That's a leaf surface. Those are the stomata there that you can see. And you can see that droplet has dried. It's let me just have a look, a 500 times enlargement of a spray droplet. It has dried, and all you can see there is the crystals of that sulfonyl urea that are still lying there on the leaf surface. Now let's take that same product, but we apply it now with a it was an antagonistic foliar nutrient in this case. That's what it looks like. So you can see the spray droplet residual looks totally different. You can, if you look at the side of that spray droplet residual, it almost seems a bit raised. The crystals are much bigger. It could be that there were reactions of that product, of the crop protection product with a foliar nutrient on the leaf. It's not that it bound it or anything. It's just that it could have bound it, but it's just that maybe there was just a physical barrier to absorption. So it is very important when you are applying tank mixtures that you know that the tank mixture that you're applying is not antagonistic, is not going to limit absorption amount or absorption rate. Because often these reactions don't happen in the spray tank where we can see these reactions. Often it only happens on the leaf when water becomes limited and you get these salting out and reactions that happen on the leaf surface, for instance. So that's the next challenge. So just on the leaf, as far as absorption is concerned, but it needn't only be absorption, it could be other processes that products do on leaf surfaces, contact action or whatever. There's so many factors that influence this. It is surface tension, which influences retention and droplet spreading. And then it's the whole absorption thing. And the whole absorption thing is also then influenced by weather, by tank mixtures. It's influenced by so many factors. The absorption routes into plants, etc., etc., etc. So, yeah, that's why it's important to stick to registrations. So I told you just now about spreading. And if I had to give you a choice as to, you know, what you think a spray droplet must look like. Let's take the product that is that the most adjuvant research has been done worldwide on, and that is glyphosate by far. Let's take glyphosate, for instance. If you apply glyphosate, which of those two spray droplets would you prefer? Would you like a spray droplet that is very poorly spread out, or would you like the one on the right that is spread out a lot? Now, I'd say 70% of people, when I ask them this question, I'm not going to ask for your response now, but when I ask them this question, they say they will choose the one on the right. But you must think further. You must think what happens after the water dries, you know, from these spray droplets. After a minute or two, the water has dried. Now, what are you left with? Then you're left with that. Then you're left with the active ingredient or the product formulation that is lying there and must be absorbed over the next few hours. And research has shown that the one on the left is sometimes more effective than the one on the right. So I'll show you some data about that just now. Sounds too good to be true, but there is data to prove that. Once again, if a grower's got a product, and surfactant that he's applying a product with, he runs out of it and he uses something else that he has in his shed, there could be repercussions, especially if conditions are not that great at that time. That's when you get you distinguish or you show the difference between the correct adjuvant choice and the incorrect adjuvant choice. So here's the data that I was talking about. So we're going to stand still a little bit at this histogram. It's actually very simple. So what we did here, we applied glyphosate with 4 different surfactants. Okay, so it was the same rate of glyphosate. The only thing that differed was the surfactant that we applied with it. And obviously you can see the big differences in efficacy. And the second thing that you can see, if you look at the percentage control, the percentage control was very poor. Even the best treatment had pretty poor control. Now, I just want to tell you, this is how adjuvant research is done. Please don't say, well, this is unacceptable and we'll never use one of these adjuvants. This is how adjuvant research is done. Normally what you do is you reduce the rate of your herbicide in this case, so that you can show the difference between adjuvants. So normally you get a less than perfect control, but you want to show the difference between the surfactants in this case. So here we applied exactly the same chemistry of surfactant. A chemistry of surfactant, for instance, are the alcohol ethoxylates that are used often in South Africa, but we're not going to go into that detail now. But all 4 surfactants in this case had exactly the same chemistry. So they were all one chemistry of surfactant. The only difference between these products was their spreading ability. So that means the rate of glyphosate was the same, the type of surfactant was the same, only their spreading ability differed. And normally what people will say is the one on the left is most spreading and the one on the right is least spreading. But it was the other way around. The product that had the best efficacy with that specific surfactant or that was applied with glyphosate, with the least spreading, had the most or the highest efficacy. The one on the right that had the most spreading was the poorest one. There are 2 reasons for this. First of all, glyphosate is one of those products. It must be applied with a surfactant, whether the surfactant is in the glyphosate formulation or whether it's applied as a tank mix. We can debate that issue some other time. But it should be applied with a surfactant. Glyphosate, I showed you in that previous slide that, after the droplet is dried, you get that, the one on the left that didn't spread a lot. It sort of was lying there in a little pile, if I can put it that way, and the other active ingredient was spread out. It's been proved in scientific research that glyphosate, that spray droplet residual, must not be spread out too much. Because if you spread it out too much, you lose that effect and you reduce efficacy. The second reason for this, and I haven't looked so in detail at the research, but this could have also happened. It could have been that the surfactant on the right, the one that spread so well and the one that where the efficacy was so poor, it could be that its retention was poorer than the one that didn't spread a lot at all, or the others that didn't spread so much. So please, people, I ask you nicely, I plead with you, do not leave out the registered adjuvant and apply nothing. Do not replace the registered surfactant or oil with another one, because you will pay for it in some way. Okay, so what happens when replacing the registered surfactant with another product? So say, for instance, that's a scenario what we have. That's the leaf surface, the green there, the green block. And on the leaf surface, you have a droplet lying there. and it's spread out a lot. So say for instance the grower is using this product because it is registered on the crop protection product label. So this is the product that he's using, but he runs out of the product, or somebody else comes to him and says to him, listen, yeah, but you'd rather use my product. And he switches to a product like this, to one that doesn't spread out a lot. What could happen? Well, there are two things that could happen. First of all, coverage could be affected. Maybe, maybe not. And efficacy will be there could have something could happen to efficacy. Maybe you can be fortunate, or the grower is fortunate, and nothing happens. All the conditions are excellent at that stage, and he gets away with it, and he thinks, well, I didn't make a mistake. That's all these surfactants, they're all the same. But I can guarantee you, under less optimal conditions, that there will be some problem with either coverage and efficacy or some other issue. Let's look at another scenario. Say, for instance, a product or a crop protection product is registered with a surfactant that doesn't spread a lot, like the one on the left. What happens if the grower decides, listen, he's going to replace that surfactant with one that spreads a hang of a lot, and the droplets are going to be spread out on the leaf surface? Well, there's almost even more that can go wrong. First of all, absorption could be affected dramatically, especially with products like glyphosate and similar products. So secondly, the efficacy will be impacted. Thirdly, runoff. We all know the effect of runoff. I'm one of those people that says adjuvants normally do not have any phytotoxic properties unless they increase the runoff of spray droplets. If they increase the runoff of spray droplets, those spray droplets go and lie on a certain area of the leaf, and you can get some phytotoxicity, some scorching of those leaves. So absorption, efficacy, runoff, phytotoxicity, they can all be problems. And then we get to, for instance, a complaint like this, and we want to blame all kinds of other things. And it could be just a simple thing of too much or too little spreading on the leaf surface, and that influences the efficacy. Now, it could be that registration holders of crop protection products have actually registered the wrong surfactant or adjuvant with their product. They could have maybe done better. But I'll tell you from my side, stick to that surfactant, even though it might not be always the most effective one. Stick to that, because that's where they did their research. That's where they worked out their crop protection product rate. And they found that there was little or no phytotoxicity, for instance, and efficacy was good. So try to stick to the label recommended surfactant or oil. If it's impossible, if, for instance, the company that distributes this adjuvant has run out of stock, then it is important that you will replace that product with another product that is registered with similar crop protection products, or that you contact your agent, or you contact me, or you contact Villa to hear, but what is a suitable adjuvant to replace it with? So hopefully that never happens, but please don't just think that surfactants and oils are just surfactants and oils and you can replace the one with the other. It just doesn't work that way. Okay, I'd like to show you a video. So we have two scenarios here. That's a leaf surface, the one on the left and the one on the right. And I'm going to try and show you what the ideal scenario is if a droplet impacts those leaves and what happens afterwards. There's something that happens on the slide that I don't quite agree with, but I'll talk about that a bit later. So let's just go through this video and have a look. So it impacts the leaf. That's what we want. We want a surfactant that hydrates the waxy layer on the leaf, that and then a surfactant or oil then takes it in by the correct absorption route and sees to it that there's as much active ingredient as possible that reaches the site of action. And therefore it's important to stick to effective, well-researched and registered adjuvants. The one thing that I do not agree with on this particular slide is the scenario on the right, sorry. It almost appears as if that surfactant or oil that's been applied there dissolved the wax on the leaf. And that is not true. Surfactants and oils do not go and strip that wax off the leaf and make it vulnerable to damage and phytotoxicity, etc., etc., etc. That's not what they do. They rather hydrate the waxy layer on the leaf to increase the absorption of a product. If you're looking at surfactants and oils, I'd say oils are maybe a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, aggressive. That's actually the wrong word because they rarely cause phytotoxicity, but oils normally hydrate the waxy layers on the leaf surface a bit more effectively than surfactants. But please remember that surfactants must be used with the correct products and oils with the correct products. Okay, let's get to Villiers surfactant and oil adjuvants that address retention, droplet spreading, and absorption. Doesn't help I talk to you about these things and we don't look at particular products, because then you know exactly which products contain surfactants and oils in their formulation. So that is the range of the Villiers adjuvants that contain a certain amount of surfactant in the formulation. So let's start. Masterlock is an oil-based adjuvant, but it also contains surfactant in the formulation, and that's a product that is used exclusively, and it has deposition agents, so it's used exclusively on fruit crops. Charge is the next one. That's Villiers super spreader surfactant. That's an organosilicone surfactant. So that is normally used when you need more spreading. For instance, you're applying on very waxy leaf surfaces, like for instance cabbage or cruciferous crops. And any place where you need to reach difficult targets. Direct is the next one, which is a mixture of a plant oil and charge. Basically, it's a plant oil plus a organosilicone super spreader. That's registered mainly with Villiers with Villiers fungicides, but also sometimes used with products like clethodim, for instance. Then we have Villiers 51, which is just a pure surfactant, alcohol ethoxylate non-ionic surfactant, and that is Villiers all-rounder product. Class Act NG, which we'll be talking about a bit later. I'm not going to go into that now. Then Summit Super is pretty similar surfactant to Villiers 51, but it also has a nitrogen solution, and it is used widely with herbicides. And then Aquabuff Plus is Villiers, one of Villiers buffer products, but also contains quite a large amount of surfactant, not a large amount, sorry, to retract that. Aquabuff doesn't contain a large amount of surfactant in the formulation. Aquabuff actually contains very little surfactant in the formulation. So that means if you are doing a fruit crop application and you just need a little bit of surfactant with your buffer, then Aquabuff might be your product. But Aquabuff Plus, I mean. But if you're applying into row crops, for instance, then the surfactant that is present in Aquabuff Plus is not enough for that. So it's important to note that when you're applying buffers that also have surfactant in the formulation, they have a limited amount of surfactant. And that limited amount of surfactant might be sufficient for fruit crop applications, but maybe altogether too little for row crop applications. But let's concentrate on Class Act a bit and show you how it works. So first of all, what Class Act does, and you'll see the two processes there. There's runoff on the water side. There's no runoff on the class act side. So therefore it increases retention. The second thing that it does, it increases droplet spreading. Not too much. Like I said, glyphosate doesn't like too much droplet spreading, but nonetheless, it increases droplet spreading. The next thing in class act that it does on the leaf surface, it contains a humectant. Now, the humectant contained in class act NG is called high fructose corn syrup or high fructose maize syrup. That is the humectant in there. But let me just show you two photographs or electron micrograph photos of a product that has been applied. This was a sulfonylurea, so it's got nothing to do with glyphosate. I just wanted to show you what a humectant does. On the left, the product was applied without a humectant. On the right, it was applied with a humectant. So I think it's quite clear from that particular slide. If you apply a product without a humectant, after the water has dried, those dry crystals of that product lie on the leaf surface or could lie on the leaf surface for an extended period of time and not be absorbed. If you're applying a product with a humectant, say for instance you're applying glyphosate with a humectant, then the spray droplet residuals remain moist. You can see that spray droplet residual looks moist. Those crystals are lying in that moist spray deposit, and that increases the absorption time. And the longer you can increase, for instance, glyphosate's absorption time, the better the efficacy will be. So that is why it is important to apply glyphosate, for instance, with humectant, but not just any humectant. I personally did research years ago with different types of humectants, and there are only some that are good for glyphosate. And the one in Class Act NG obviously is the one that we recommend. The next one that I'd like to show you, and remember that number there, 125%. We've said now what the surfactant does in Class Act. It increases retention and the droplet spreading. The humectant keeps that spray droplet moist for a longer period of time on the leaf surface. Now, how does that all relate to efficacy? So the one on the left was Chenopodium hornbossi that was that received a certain rate of glyphosate, and the adjuvant used there was ammonium sulfate. The one on the right was the same weed, but Class Act was used. Now, Class Act also contains ammonium sulfate. However, the Class Act also contains the surfactant and the humectant. Look what difference the surfactant and the humectant make. First of all, you can see a bit of increase in speed in the first place, and I'm going to play it right through to day 13. In the end, both sides were controlled, okay, whether it had ammonium sulfate or the other one had Class Act NG. But you could clearly see that the speed of dying, of necrosis in those weeds was much higher on the Class Act NG side. And it could be that if you had chosen a lower rate, for instance, or applied on a very difficult to control weed, it could be that the one on the left would never have been controlled. So that is how important humectants and surfactants are. The 125% was, with this, Winfield also did some research, lab research, and they applied glyphosate just with ammonium sulfate, and then they applied it with Class Act NG, and then they measured with C14, they measured the amount of absorption. And when applying glyphosate with Class Act NG, the absorption was 125% higher than ammonium sulfate alone. Just shows what an adjuvant can do. Then just a last slide before I carry on. Villa's not into stickers. We do have a sticker in that was registered a few years ago, but it's not commercialized, probably because we didn't place too much emphasis on the stickers. But let me tell you what stickers are. Stickers are not surfactants. Things like Villa 51 charge or whatever have got no sticking properties. Therefore, if you apply the product, it rains afterwards, then surfactant, if it's still moist, chances are small because it dries out relatively quickly, but it will be washed off. With stickers, they're normally made from pine resin or synthetic products. And these products, they physically stick. So that spray droplet residual sticks for an extended period of time. So they applied mostly on fruit and veggie crops. They're from pine resin or synthetic, I told you that. The labels that are out there say that they can handle up to 25 millimeters of rain or irrigation. I put a question mark over behind that because it might do that, but I think depending on the intensity of the rain. And then that spray droplet residual degrades gradually over time. So this means it's a typical product that you will apply with contact fungicides and insecticides that you want stuck on the leaf surface for an extended period. So different stickers have different sticking times ranging from 7 to 21 days. The ones that have got 7 days are normally applied more on veggie crops. The ones with 21 days are more applied on fruit crops. My big questions over these products and not the products themselves, I got no don't want to discuss anyone's product, but as far as the Villa portfolio is concerned, crop protection product portfolio, I want to know what the effect on the absorption of systemic crop protection products are. We don't always know. And secondly, the effect on other adjuvants. If you're using this, can you still add another adjuvant to the spray mixture? So we tread lightly with these particular products. What I would recommend you to do, if you do need a product that sticks spray droplet residuals, then ask the registration holder for his label, and it should be an extended label. You must see that it is registered with a range of crop protection products, and in particular the type of crop protection product that you want to apply. If it does not have that on the label, then I don't know, I doubt if the research has been done. And the second thing is to ask for data. For data on that particular product. So I'm not shooting these products down at all. I think they have their place. I think they're niche products, just like the super spreaders that I spoke about. I think these products also have their place, but they must be used in a registered fashion. And when I say I just want to get back there. When I say in a registered fashion, with Villa crop protection products, because that's where we have a say into what adjuvants can be applied with our crop protection products and what not. And then shortly the summary, we sort of on time, maybe a few minutes ahead of time. Adjuvants are important beyond the tank and the droplet. And we so often forget that once we've fixed the water quality and once we've corrected the spray droplets sizing and we've reduced the ultrafine droplets, we think everything is okay, but we forget about that process that happens on the plant afterwards. And in some cases, I believe that is probably what, it's difficult to say which process is the most important, but I've got a soft spot for the plant because I think it's very important and often forgotten. We must remember that surfactants and oils increase retention, droplet spreading, and absorption. So if a product or a crop protection product is registered with an adjuvant, then please apply it with that adjuvant. Sometimes companies prefer to include their adjuvants in their formulations, and then you must look at your tank mixture and whether it's necessary to add other surfactants or oils or not. But it's important that when you have a registration with a particular adjuvant that you apply it with that, especially the surfactants and oils, and obviously this applies to all adjuvants, water quality rectifying adjuvants, deposition agents, etc., etc., etc. And we need to reduce the effect of water quality, weather, and the plant surface to increase efficacy. Now we talk water quality. We spoke last time about pH and cations, but a very important water quality factor that we never take into or very little take into consideration is surface tension, and it plays such a huge role with the efficacy of products like I showed you, and just simple spreading of spray droplets can influence the efficacy of products. Good. We're basically at the end of my presentation, and please don't leave at this stage because we've got 2 more slides to go through, and the last one will be the competition slide. But we've just got this advert on Class Act NG, and that's basically what we spoke about. So it's a 4-in-1 adjuvant. Class Act NG, the NG stands for next generation. So Class Act is an established name in the United States, for instance. It's been on the market for many years, but each time they changed something in the product, the formulation or added a different surfactant or whatever, they gave it a different suffix, and Class Act NG stands for next generation. So it contains the ammonium sulfate, the corn sorb technology, which is the humectant, a non-ionic surfactant, and the anti-foam product. So you're welcome to scan that code there, and that will take you to the Class Act NG label, and then also some more information, I think, about Class Act. And then basically the last slide today is the competition slide. So I'm going to ask you people to scan that QR code that you can see on the screen now. It will take you to answer 3 quick questions, and then you can win obviously those prizes that are shown on the right there. So please scan that and don't go off yet. Even though you've scanned, I've just got a few things that I'd like to say, but as I'm talking, you can just scan that and start answering those questions. So people, I want to, and let me just put on my camera. I want to thank you very much for joining today's webinar. We trust that the session provided valuable insights into what happens on the plant leaf, basically, and how we can improve product performance. So we've gone through now water quality, we've gone through droplets, manipulation, and the last one was how to increase efficacy on the leaf surface, and that's where adjuvants are so important in each phase. Now, please feel free to leave your comments about the webinar in the comments section. It's always great to hear from you, so please do that. And please scan that QR code. I have told you already to stand a chance to win those prizes. And then lastly, and also an important point, is please look out for communication coming your way over the next few days with a short question and answer activity, giving you the opportunity to earn CPD points. So I think that's very important. So that you will receive in the next few days. And yeah, that is my story. Thank you so much for joining today. We are basically 5 minutes from time, and it was really a pleasure for me to present today. Thank you so much.